You'll be fine without me, I lied to my team, the same way you lie to a dog before a vet visit. I was standing in the hallway, coffee in one hand, folder in the other, watching the new intern try to fix the copier like it was a bomb about to go off. The machine coughed, wheezed, and printed a half-chewed onboarding packet. Welcome to Northwell Innovations, where printers outlast people. I'd been VP of strategy for so long they stopped updating my photo in the org chart. 15 years, 3 acquisitions, 2 recessions, 1 divorce, and not once did I get a seat at the top floor's quarterly Scotch and Savior Complex round table. But I didn't mind. I liked the silence. I liked being the shadow behind the curtain, the one who remembered what the old CRM login was, who still had the founder's cell number saved under don't call unless it's DEFCON 2. And yet, the air in the office had changed. There was a sense of, how do I put it? Looming PowerPoint doom, whispers, nervous breakroom glances, calendar invites with no recipients. The kind of vibe that makes you triple-check your pension portal and clear out the snack drawer just in case someone comes for your macadamias. The CEO, Charles Matheson, chucked to the board, or to anyone with a mortgage, had been unusually quiet. And that silence? It echoed louder than a pink slip on a Friday afternoon. He'd missed 2 leadership syncs, left early from the quarterly town hall, and last week, his secretary accidentally CC'd me on a forwarded document titled, Succession Outline Confidential. That word, succession, carried the same weight as diagnosis or eviction. Still, I stayed calm, controlled, like I always had. Because here's the thing. In the darkest quarter of 2008, when the market tanked and Chuck's personal liquidity dropped faster than his hairline, he asked me if I wanted bonuses or equity. I chose equity, quietly, and I never looked back, so I did what I always do. I prepared. I reviewed the transition plan I'd written, unasked, 6 months ago. Color-coded roles, risk mitigation, a side-by-side of potential successors, including one option labeled nepotism contingency. A little joke to myself, except not really. Then came the calendar change, a Monday morning meeting. 9:00 a.m. Subject line, new era leadership discussion. Invite only. I wasn't on the list. I wasn't even on the floor plan. My office phone stopped ringing. My assistant, technically shared resource now, was reassigned to help project realignment. And when I walked into the copy room that Friday, 2 interns stopped whispering and one accidentally said she doesn't know yet out loud. Poor kid. I asked him to grab me some staples. He brought back breath mints. Still, I smiled. Because this is how the game is played. They forget. They assume. They move pieces around thinking they're the only ones with the rulebook. They have no idea how many pages I've written in it. Anyway, if you've made it this far, do me a favor, tap that subscribe button and throw a like on this story. It really helps the team keep digging up these tales that corporate HR would rather keep buried under a non-disclosure agreement and a free lunch voucher. Back to it. I sat down at my desk that Friday night, turned off Slack, and opened a folder. Inside, my original equity contract, the audit trail from 5 funding rounds, and a small sticky note from Chuck from back in 2011. Thanks for saving our ass. Again. I'd kept it for sentiment. Now it felt like evidence. I ran the numbers. Then I ran them again. And then I smiled, not big, not wide, just enough to feel my cheekbones tighten under skin that hadn't cracked in years. If my math was right, and it always was, I didn't need an invitation to that Monday meeting. I was the meeting. They just didn't know it yet. He strolled in like he was late for a TED talk he never got invited to. Travis Matheson, our new CEO. Nepotism's wet dream, walking proof that an MBA from Stanford can't fix a man raised by performance bonuses and golf carts. Monday morning, 8:59 a.m., he stepped out of the elevator wearing a blazer 3 shades too tight, holding a stainless steel mug that read, Boss Mode activated. The only thing missing was a cape and a LinkedIn post about hustle culture. The office practically held its breath. Not in admiration, more like the way you hold your breath when you open a Tupperware you forgot about for 3 weeks. I watched from my desk as he took the tour. His laugh echoed before he did. Interns giggled like hostages trying to blink Morse code. He fist-bumped the receptionist, mispronounced half the department heads' names, and made a joke about turning the 5th floor into a Zen productivity garden. Whatever that meant. Then came the email, please report to conference room B. Immediately, no subject line, no greeting, just the digital equivalent of being dragged behind the school gym by the principal and the vice squad. I took my folder, smoothed my blazer, walked down the hall like I had a meeting with death but still planned to take notes. He was already seated, legs crossed, arms spread across the table like a frat boy pretending he understood quarterly burn rates. No one else in the room, just me, Travis, and the kind of tension that tastes like metal fillings and bad decisions. He didn't stand, just gave me a smirk that probably worked wonders on sorority formals and junior analysts who still believed in meritocracy. Anna, he said, dragging out the N like he was savoring it, we're terminating you effective immediately, sweetheart. Sweetheart. That word hit the wall behind me like a brick thrown by a ghost. He said it like punctuation, like the exclamation point on a badly written email. I looked at him, blinked once, then reached into my bag, pulled out my badge, laid it gently on the table. Didn't say a word, just let the silence expand until it pressed on his temples like a migraine. He wasn't expecting that. You could tell he wanted a scene, a meltdown. Maybe tears or a whispered, "How could you?" He wanted confirmation that he mattered. I wouldn't give him that. What I gave him instead was paperwork. "I'll need the termination documents in duplicate," I said, tone flat as the Ohio plains. "Original signature on both." He blinked. HR has the—" "I know," I said. "But since this is effective immediately, I'd like to leave with copies. Legal prefers it that way." He nodded too fast, like a kid pretending to understand algebra. Then he leaned back and tried to reclaim control. "No hard feelings, right? Just a new direction. Younger energy, you understand." "I do," I said. Then I stood, left my company-issued phone on the table, turned to leave, paused. "Make sure IT revokes my access," I added just before the door closed. Immediately, that part caught him. He looked up, suddenly unsure if he'd made a mistake or if I was bluffing. He wouldn't know until it was too late. I walked past the front desk. The receptionist gave me a look like she'd seen a ghost or maybe the future. I didn't go to my car. I didn't go cry in the bathroom like half the company probably expected. I stepped into the elevator, hit the button for the top floor. Because while Travis was busy playing CEO, I was already halfway into a different game. When I started writing 15 years ago. And today, I came to collect. The hallway smelled like toner and panic. I passed 2 junior associates whispering near the water cooler. One mouthed, "Was that her?" The other nodded like he'd just seen a ghost walk out of a tax audit. Let them whisper. Let them speculate. I didn't break stride. Not toward the exit. Not toward the tear-streaked finale they all expected. Instead, I pivoted left, heels clicking against the marble tile like a countdown. Straight to the elevator marked restricted board access only. I'd never used it in 15 years. Today, I did. I pressed the button, the door sighed open, and I stepped inside. Alone, no phone, no security badge, no one to stop me. My reflection in the mirrored elevator wall stared back, calm, pressed, poised. The type of woman who gets called intimidating in anonymous feedback surveys. The type of woman who doesn't need to raise her voice because she already wrote the policy everyone's about to cite. Floor 11 lit up red. The top floor, while Travis was probably throwing a Nerf ball in the marketing bullpen and asking someone to set up his Slack avatar, I was rising through the building like a bullet. I didn't call legal, didn't message Chuck. I didn't need backup. I had paperwork. When the doors opened, the carpet changed from the industrial gray every other employee walked on to a plush navy reserved for boardroom feet and shareholder decisions. There were no interns up here, no birthday cupcakes. Just silence and cold glass and the kind of lighting that makes men feel like kings and women feel like trespassers. I walked straight down the corridor, past the receptionist who blinked twice and opened her mouth, only to find nothing to say. I opened the double doors to the boardroom myself. It was already half full. The chairman, 3 board members, and the corporate counsel, Karen Lai, were seated and murmuring over an agenda sheet. They all looked up at once. The chairman raised one snowy eyebrow. "Anna?" "Good morning," I said, tone sharp as a scalpel. I walked to the seat I used to be invited to once a year for performance reviews. This time, I didn't wait for an invitation. I sat. From my bag, I pulled the folder. Thick, labeled in gold Sharpie, Voting Majority Confirmation Equity Comp Agreement 2008-2023. And then I placed it, delicately, on the glass table. Karen Lai leaned forward before the others. Legal always sniffs blood first. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. I just opened the folder, turned it 180 degrees, and slid it toward her. The room went still. One board member cleared his throat but didn't speak. Another shifted in his chair. I leaned back and crossed one leg over the other, the way men do in meetings when they think the room belongs to them. At exactly 9:03 a.m., clock above the boardroom door let out a single mechanical click. The chairman looked at it, then looked at me. He didn't say a word, neither did I. But we both understood, the real meeting had just started. Somewhere 2 floors down, Travis was probably mispronouncing someone's name again, or sketching org charts on a whiteboard like a toddler let loose with dry erase markers. He called it a culture reset, which, in his dialect of buzzword bro-speak, meant firing anyone who didn't worship at the altar of disruption and avocado toast ideology. Meanwhile, in the boardroom, the only thing being disrupted was everyone's blood pressure. Karen Lai had stopped flipping pages. Her posture had changed, no longer casual, no longer performative. She adjusted her glasses twice in the same minute. When a lawyer double-checks her glasses, it's either a typo or a bomb. I didn't move, just sat there with my hands in my lap, watching the ripple travel across the table. One board member, Jim, I think, the one who always smelled like cigar ash and scotch, leaned in and whispered something to the chairman. The chairman didn't respond. He was reading now, slowly. The silence grew legs, then it grew teeth. No one looked at me, which is how I knew it was working. You see, the equity agreement from 2008 had always been treated like a ceremonial gesture, pat on the head for not jumping ship during the worst quarter in company history. Everyone assumed it was diluted over time, rolled into restricted stock units, or buried under more recent funding rounds. Everyone assumed wrong. I'd reinvested every bonus, every vesting milestone, every long-term incentive plan right back into the company. Quietly, legally, and with full paper trails. I didn't need recognition. I needed leverage, and leverage, like revenge, was best served with spreadsheets. Karen finally spoke, voice tight. This clause, she said, tapping the page, it doesn't have a cap. The chairman looked up, pale. Karen continued, it was never amended. There's no dilution language. And these, she gestured to the trailing pages, these are all confirmed reinvestments. Dated, executed. Another board member, Sheila, head of compliance, tilted her head. But that would mean, yes, Karen cut in, her voice flattening into legal dread. If these holdings are accurate and none have been forfeited or expired, she looked at me for the first time. Then Anna holds 51.4% of voting shares. That landed like a grenade without the sound. Just the impact. Papers stopped rustling. Pens stilled. Even Jim stopped pretending to sip his coffee. I didn't gloat, didn't lean forward. I simply uncrossed my legs and rested my elbows on the table. Any questions? I asked. The chairman's throat clicked as he swallowed. We need to verify with finance. Already done, I said, sliding a second sheet across the table. Latest breakdown as of last quarter. I had it notarized. Karen took it, skimmed, and nodded once. Her face looked like she'd just bitten into aluminum foil. There was a knock on the door. A junior staffer poked her head in, clearly rattled. I'm sorry, but Mr. Matheson is asking if the boardroom is occupied. The chairman didn't even turn around. Tell him to wait. The girl blinked and disappeared. Karen closed the folder gently. We'll need a full session, she said. Immediately, I assumed, I replied. And then I did something that shook them more than anything written on those pages. I smiled, just slightly, because we hadn't even gotten to the fun part yet. The door creaked open like it didn't want to be part of what was about to happen. Charles Matheson stepped into the boardroom, 10 minutes late and 20 years older than the last time I'd seen him in person. He looked tired, coat slung over one arm, hair more gray than silver now, and that permanent frown he wore when a quarterly report disappointed him. But today, he wasn't walking into a revenue issue. Today, he was walking into a legacy problem. His eyes landed on me first, not on the board, not on Karen or the folder. Me. And for the first time in 15 years, the old lion looked scared. He saw the open file. His gaze dropped to the bold label across the front. Voting Majority Confirmation Equity Comp Agreement 2008-2023. He didn't ask why I was here. He didn't ask what I wanted. He asked one thing, did he already fire you? I nodded once. Charles closed his eyes, just briefly. Then he pulled out the nearest chair and sat down like he'd been punched in the spine. Call him in, he said quietly. The chairman shifted, uncertain. Charles, we're still reviewing, I said call him in. Charles repeated, this time with gravel in his voice. Now, he didn't look at me again. He didn't have to. Whatever denial he'd lived in about his son's readiness just evaporated. One of the assistants stepped out. We sat in tense silence, the air practically sweating. Karen reopened the file, her fingers visibly shaking now. There's something else, she murmured, eyes darting between pages. Clause 14, subsection C. The chairman leaned forward. What about it? She didn't speak immediately. Just turned the folder toward him, tapped the page. His eyes scanned it, then widened. Jesus Christ, I already knew what they were seeing. Clause 14C, in the event of board or founder absence, the equity holder reserves the right to veto any executive-level decisions made without full board consent, including but not limited to changes in financial infrastructure, vendor relationships, and personnel restructuring. In plain English, if I got fired without the board's vote or the founder's express sign-off, I could treat every decision made after that like it never happened. And Travis had wasted no time. He'd already revoked access to 4 project repositories, granted third-party vendor access to payroll systems, appointed his college roommate as interim VP of Innovation, complete with admin-level permissions to proprietary research files, all before 10 o'clock a.m. Every one of those moves, now a liability. Sheila compliance broke the silence. This could trigger a cascade. If we act on anything Travis approved this morning without Anna's confirmation, we're exposed. Contracts voided. Licenses breached, Karen added. God help us if that consulting firm touches protected data. Charles finally spoke again. He's not even through orientation and we're already risking litigation. The door opened again. Travis walked in like he was about to present a Q3 pitch deck to high schoolers. Blazer unbuttoned, mug still in hand. That smug grin bolted onto his face like he'd just come back from telling the interns how to revolutionize spreadsheets. And then he saw me. The smile died, not all at once, but like a helium balloon with a slow leak, quiet, pathetic, inevitable. His eyes moved to the folder, then to Karen, then to Charles. He opened his mouth, but Charles beat him to it. Sit down, the founder said. And for once in your life, Travis, don't say a damn word. Travis stopped just inside the boardroom like someone had yanked his power cord mid-strut. The smile froze, the swagger stalled, even the mug in his hand. Boss mode activated seemed to wilt a little. His eyes ping-ponged across the room, trying to recalibrate what he was seeing. He landed on me last. That's when it really hit him. What is this? He asked, not laughing anymore. The silence that followed didn't invite answers. It smothered them. Charles didn't even look up from the folder. He simply placed one thick, liver-spotted hand on it and said, almost casually, that's your termination paperwork being reviewed. Travis blinked, laughed short, dry. Wait, what? No. This is some kind of joke, right? I mean, I just got here. You can't fire me, He jabbed a finger toward himself like a bad improv actor trying to reclaim the scene. I am the CEO. Karen Lai cleared her throat. That sound had more menace than most people's raised voices. You were acting CEO, she said, unfolding a document like it was a blade. Pending board review and oversight, which includes, and I quote, prohibited execution of executive orders without board quorum during first 90 days of interim assignment. Travis's head whipped toward Charles. You signed off on this? This transition plan, this whole thing? Charles's face looked carved from stone. I signed a proposal, not a coronation, but I terminated her. She's just an employee. That was the moment. The one I'd waited 15 years to deliver. I turned toward him, slow and deliberate, like pulling the safety off a loaded truth. No, Travis, I said, my voice clean and sharp as glass. I'm your employer. The air left the room. It didn't rush out, it evaporated. Travis blinked again, but this time like his contact lenses had just dissolved in acid. Karen continued, flipping to another tab in the folder. As of current calculations, verified last quarter and reconfirmed this morning, Ms. James holds 51.4% of voting shares, with proxy voting rights established via a 2015 amendment signed by the founder. She slid the document across the table to Charles, who barely glanced at it before tapping the signature line with a single finger. Travis backed up half a step. But that's ceremonial. It's just stock. It doesn't mean anything. Karen's eyes narrowed. It means every action you've taken today is nullified, unless explicitly ratified by Miss James or the board. That includes terminations, access grants, internal reorganizations, and third-party engagements. She turned another page. In fact, by proceeding with those actions before being granted official status, you violated not one, but two core bylaws of Northwell corporate governance. Travis looked around like someone might interrupt and say, just kidding, like Ashton Kutcher might pop out with a camera and a boom mic. No one did. Sheila, ever the rule keeper, spoke next. You're personally liable for any damages incurred by your decisions, including breach of confidentiality and unauthorized access to sensitive systems. I didn't know, Travis sputtered. That's the problem, Charles said, low and lethal. You didn't know, and you didn't ask. He turned to me then. First time since I'd walked in. Anna, he said, voice heavy. How far has he reached? I answered without hesitation. Payroll systems, vendor contracts, and he's already handed data access to a consulting firm run by a former fraternity brother. Karen's head snapped up. You have documentation? In the folder, I said. She turned the pages, stopped, stared. Sheila swore under her breath. Travis stood frozen, one hand still wrapped around that stupid mug like it was a life raft in a sea of consequences. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I just looked at him the same way you'd look at a burning dumpster behind your childhood home. Familiar, disappointing, and far too late to salvage. And I waited, because the real fire hadn't even started yet. You could have dropped a pin in that boardroom and heard it beg for mercy. Nobody moved, not Charles, not Karen, not the board, not even Travis, whose knuckles were now white from gripping the edge of the table like it might somehow keep his dignity from slipping off into the abyss. I reached back into my folder, not rushed, not dramatic, just clinical. A motion I'd done 1,000 times in 1,000 meetings, pull document, rotate place. Only this time the document wasn't a quarterly projection or market analysis. It was power. A single page, laminated and original, the signature so deeply pressed into the paper it cast a shadow. Signed and notarized June 12, 2015, I said evenly, granting me full proxy authority in the absence or incapacitation of the founder, specifically as it pertains to shareholder voting rights, emergency decisions, and executive appointments. Karen's mouth moved, but no sound came out. She reached for the page like it might vanish. It was buried in the shareholder appendix packet, I continued, under temporary board provisions. I reviewed it again last year when Chuck missed Q2 due to his surgery. Charles winced, not because it wasn't true, but because it was. And since you, I added, glancing his way, have not attended more than one board session this fiscal quarter and are listed in official filings as non-active emeritus. The clause activates. Karen, read the signature, the witness stamp. The founder's full legal name etched in black ink like a warning label on a bottle of regret. Which makes you, she started, already knowing the answer. I looked directly at Travis. The acting chairwoman, I finished. A cold shiver passed through the room. Not dramatic, not visible, but felt. Like the second before lightning hits your fence post. Jim, the cigar-breathed board member, sat back like someone had pulled the air out of his lungs. That gives her authority to override executive orders, Karen said softly, to call emergency votes, to restructure the C-suite, to revoke access, to initiate forensic audits, to appoint and remove leadership pending board confirmation. She can't, Travis started, his voice cracking like a teenager caught in his dad's liquor cabinet. She just did, Charles cut him off. At that moment, a light ping echoed from Karen's laptop. Then another, then a third. She glanced at her screen. IT just confirmed your administrative credentials have been revoked, she told Travis without looking at him. Effective immediately. What? He snapped. No, I didn't authorize, you didn't need to, I said calmly. I did, he turned to Charles. Dad. Charles stared at the tabletop like it had betrayed him. He didn't even flinch. You told me I'd have control, Travis pleaded, his voice thin and sharp now. You said it was mine. Charles finally looked at him. I said you'd earn it, he said, but you didn't. Travis stood there, trembling, realizing in real time that every keystroke he made this morning would be reverse engineered, archived, and likely submitted as evidence. His frat boy consulting firm, about to get a cease and desist. His access to payroll, gone. His fancy standing desk, still labeled reserved for CEO, might as well say garage sale. Karen leaned forward again. We'll have legal draw up the official cease operations notice. Until then, you are not to issue orders, speak to staff as CEO, or act in any leadership capacity. Any attempt to do so will be treated as corporate interference. He looked at her dumbfounded. You're just going to let her do this? Karen turned her gaze to me. She's not doing anything illegal, Travis. Then she turned back to him. She's doing her job. Charles shifted in his seat with the weight of a man about to saw off his own legacy. His eyes stayed fixed on the edge of the table, avoiding Travis like the kid was radioactive. The founder who once dominated this boardroom with booming speeches and whiskey-chested bravado now looked quiet, measured, like he was choosing the right kind of knife. Then he spoke. I motion for the removal of the acting CEO, he said, the words dry as ash. No drama, no preamble. Just a bullet in sentence form. Sheila didn't even wait, seconded. The chairman looked around the table. All in favor? Hands went up like synchronized swimmers in a funeral procession. Karen didn't even ask for objections. Motion passes, she said, tapping the meeting notes, effective immediately. Travis dropped into a chair like his legs gave out. All that performative alpha energy evaporated. There was no protest, no fight, just the faint sound of his delusion crumpling in real time. I didn't cheer, didn't raise an eyebrow. I simply opened my folder one last time, reached in and pulled out my old badge. It still had the original lanyard, frayed on the edges from years of use. I slid it across the glass surface until it stopped just in front of Karen. No ceremony, no applause, just gravity. Karen picked it up, looked at me, then at the rest of the board. Do we have consensus on reinstatement? Charles finally looked at me, not with the warmth of an old colleague, but the wariness of a man seeing the replacement he should have chosen all along. Anna, he said, voice low, if you're willing. I nodded once. No smile, just certainty. Let's continue, I replied. The room exhaled, but I didn't. There was still business to finish. Still fires to snuff out or light. Travis stood now, trying to salvage what was left of his presence. Can't just walk in here and take everything. You were out. I never left the building, I said without turning to him. That line cut deeper than anything shouted ever could, because it was true. I hadn't packed a box. I hadn't cleared my desk. I hadn't said goodbye because I was never out of power. I was just waiting for him to underestimate me. Waiting for the board to remember who built the scaffolding they were all standing on. Waiting for the precise moment when entitlement would crash headfirst into contract law and be forced to read every footnote I'd ever written. Karen slid me a new folder, fresh draft, title at the top, Executive Reinstatement and Authority Confirmation. I didn't need to read it, not because I was arrogant, but because I probably ghost-wrote it 10 years ago. I signed, handed it back. End of story for Travis. Beginning of something else for me. Founder turned to the rest of the room, trying to reclaim some air of control. We'll need to walk back everything he touched this morning. Legal, finance, IT, I raised my hand just slightly. Already started, I said. I left instructions with IT on my way up. He blinked. You knew? I finally allowed myself the faintest smile. I assumed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't pound the table. I simply lifted one hand and said, let's bring this meeting back to order. The temperature in the room dropped 5 degrees. Karen looked like she'd aged a decade in the last hour. Her knuckles were white around the pen in her grip, and the legal pad in front of her had turned into a war zone of underlines, arrows, and hastily scrawled timestamps. She was still visibly shaking, not from fear, but from the cold understanding that today would become a case study in every corporate law textbook worth its salt. Pushed a new packet toward her. 3 tabs. Each one a fire alarm with a barcode. 3 executive actions initiated this morning without board approval, I said, my voice sharp and clean. All made null as of 10:37 a.m. Karen flipped open the packet. First, I continued, Travis authorized a data access grant to an external firm, Caro Partners. You'll see here, I pointed to the attached org chart, the principal agent of record is Grant Helser, Travis's fraternity brother, no security clearance, no data sharing protocol, and no NDA on file. Sheila from compliance sucked in a breath so hard it sounded like a gasp. He opened the R&D vault to an unvetted third party? Yes, Jesus Christ, she muttered. Second, I said, flipping to the next tab, a unilateral budget shift from Project Cerberus, our patent-pending biometrics initiative, to a new initiative he called Northwell Next. There's no proposal, no projection sheet, no deliverables. Just a $2.6 million wire marked brand refresh. Even Jim, who'd spent most of the meeting slumped in his chair like a hungover war veteran, sat up at that. Is that criminal? He asked. It will be, I said. Third, Karen turned the page before I spoke. She read, blinked. "This is access to the equity ledger," she whispered. He gave himself admin-level clearance to the internal cap table software and attempted to initiate a vesting acceleration for his own RSUs, I said. "Didn't go through. System flagged it, but the intent is clear." Silence again. The kind that makes board members look down and reevaluate their entire involvement. I looked at the founder. He didn't speak. He just gave a slow nod. I turned to Karen. "I recommend we file an internal grievance report and initiate a full forensic audit. If the evidence holds, we refer it to the board's legal committee to initiate formal charges." Karen tapped her pen once. "Agreed." Sheila agreed. "Jim, do it." Travis didn't speak. He didn't move. The mug with his stupid slogan sat tipped on its side near the edge of the table, cold coffee leaking onto the surface like blood under a cracked tooth. Meeting dissolved into next steps and damage control. The cleanup crew portion of corporate war. But I didn't stay for that part. I stood, collected my folder, slid it neatly into my bag. Charles rose beside me. He didn't offer an apology, didn't say thank you, just walked beside me step for step down the hallway as we left the boardroom behind. We passed staff without fanfare. No applause, no party. No welcome banner with my name in sans serif font and a fruit tray from HR. Just silent acknowledgement. Eyes wide, mouths closed. No one dared speak, not because of fear, because of respect. At the end of the hallway, the doors to the CEO suite stood open. The assistant, new, fresh-faced, terrified, stood and nodded slightly as I entered. Charles stopped just short of the threshold. "You sure about this?" he asked. I turned once, looked him in the eye. "I'm not here to make noise," I said. Then I stepped into the office that used to belong to him, and I'm not here to make friends. I set my bag on the desk, turned toward the window, looked down at the city that used to ignore me. I'm here to clean house. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.